The car pulled up to a building I didn't recognize. My son Daniel helped me out, his hand firm on my elbow. "Just a quick evaluation, Mom," he said. "The doctor wants to check a few things." I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? He was my son. Inside, a nurse with a bright smile handed me forms. Daniel signed them quickly, barely glancing at the pages. The nurse wheeled me past a reception desk, through a hallway that smelled like disinfectant and boiled vegetables. We passed a locked door with a keypad. "Welcome to your new home, Mrs. Patterson," she said cheerfully. My stomach dropped. "What? No, I'm just here for—" "Your son explained everything," she interrupted gently. "Let's get you settled." Daniel was already walking away. He didn't look back. The nurse pushed me into a small room with 2 beds. One was occupied by a woman who stared at the ceiling without blinking. The other bed had my name on a plastic card, Helen Patterson. On the bedside table sat a manila folder. The tab read, "Permanent placement." My hands started shaking. This wasn't an evaluation. This was something else entirely. I couldn't sleep that first night. The woman across from me kept muttering about her daughter. Every hour, call bells rang down the hallway. Footsteps shuffled past my door. In the morning, a social worker named Mrs. Alvarez came to introduce herself. She was younger than Daniel, with kind eyes and a clipboard tucked under her arm. "How are you settling in?" she asked. "I don't understand why I'm here," I said carefully. "I live in my own house. I take care of myself." Something flickered across her face. She glanced at the door, then sat down beside me. "Mrs. Patterson, may I show you something?" She opened my file slowly. Inside were pages of notes, all dated within the last 3 months. Someone had documented incidents I didn't remember, because they never happened. October 12th, left stove burner on for 2 hours. Neighbor intervened. October 19th, forgot grandson's name during phone call. November 3rd, found wandering 3 blocks from home, confused about location. None of it was true. Not one word. My throat tightened. Who wrote this? Mrs. Alvarez pointed to the signatures. Daniel's name appeared on half the pages. His wife Nicole's name appeared on the rest. Then she turned to the final page, a consent form with my signature at the bottom. Except it wasn't my signature. The letters were shaky, wrong. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My roommate sobbed quietly into her pillow. Someone down the hall screamed for their mother. The fluorescent lights hummed. Every sound felt louder in the darkness. I kept thinking about my house, the one I'd lived in for 42 years. The garden I planted every spring. The porch where I drank my morning coffee. Was Daniel really selling it? Fear crawled up my spine, but then something else replaced it. Something harder. Anger. I wasn't confused. I wasn't forgetful. I wasn't helpless. And I wasn't staying here. I sat up slowly, careful not to wake my roommate. The door had a small window with wired glass. I could see the hallway beyond it, empty except for a nurse at the far station. I tried the handle. It didn't turn. A soft click echoed in the quiet room. The door was locked from the outside. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass and made myself a promise. I would find a way out. Daniel visited 3 days later. He brought flowers, cheap carnations from a grocery store. Nicole stood beside him, her purse clutched tight against her body. "How are you feeling, Mom?" Daniel asked. His voice was slow, deliberate, like he was talking to a child. "I'm fine," I said clearly. "I want to go home." He exchanged a glance with Nicole. "The doctors think you need more time here. It's safer." "What doctors?" "I haven't seen anyone." "They reviewed your file," Nicole said quickly. "Everything's documented." I looked directly at her. "Did you write those notes?" Her face went pale, but Daniel cut in. "We're doing what's best for you. The house needs work anyway. We're planning to get it sold before winter." My heart stopped. "Sold? It's too much for you to handle," he said. "We'll use the money for your care. It's already arranged." Before I could respond, they were standing. Nicole smiled tightly. "We'll visit again soon." The door closed behind them. I sat frozen on my bed, their words echoing in my mind. They were selling my house, the home I'd raised Daniel in, the place where his father and I built our life together. And I had never agreed to any of it. I tried to tell a nurse what happened. She nodded sympathetically and made notes on her tablet. The next morning, I saw what she'd written. A resident named Mrs. Cooper shuffled past my room. She paused at my doorway and whispered, "Be careful what you say, dear. Once they write down that you're agitated, everything you do proves it." I thanked her quietly. At lunch, I sat with Mrs. Cooper and two other women. One of them, Frances, had been here for 6 years. Her daughter controlled her pension and visited twice a year. They said I was confused, Frances told me. But I knew exactly what was happening. By the time I tried to fight it, nobody would listen. Mrs. Cooper leaned closer. "The trick is staying calm. Don't give them ammunition." I absorbed every word. I couldn't afford mistakes. Every reaction would be documented, twisted, used against me. That afternoon, a nurse asked how I was feeling. I smiled politely and said, "Just fine, thank you." She made a note anyway. Later, I saw what she'd written. "Patient appears agitated despite denials. Recommend monitoring." I hadn't said a single word out of line. **6**. Mrs. Alvarez returned the following week. She closed the door behind her and spoke quietly. "Mrs. Patterson, I've reviewed your file more carefully. There are inconsistencies." My pulse quickened. What kind of inconsistencies? Medical notes that reference appointments you never attended. Observations from staff members who weren't working those days. Signatures that don't match previous documents. She sat down, her voice dropping lower. "If you want help, we have to do this properly. By the book. No shortcuts. What do I need to do?" "Request copies of every document in your file. Formally. In writing. Once they're in your hands, we can review them together." She handed me a pen and a request form. I filled it out slowly, making sure every letter was clear and steady. "How long will it take?" I asked. 7 business days. Legally, they have to comply. As she stood to leave, she turned back. "One more thing. Stay calm. Don't give them any reason to label you as difficult." After she left, I felt something I hadn't felt since arriving, hope. But it was fragile, and I knew Daniel wouldn't let this go easily. I needed help outside these walls. Someone who could investigate without raising suspicion. I asked a nurse if I could use the facility phone. She watched as I dialed, her eyes tracking every movement. I called Thomas Fletcher, an old friend from church. His son-in-law was a paralegal, and Thomas himself had worked in public records for 30 years. "Helen." His voice was warm, surprised. "I heard you moved into care. Are you all right?" "I need your help, Thomas," I said quietly. "Something's wrong." I explained as much as I could without sounding paranoid. Thomas listened without interrupting. "Let me make some calls," he finally said. "I'll see what I can find." 2 days later, my phone privileges were suddenly restricted. A nurse said it was routine policy review. But that afternoon, Thomas sent a message through Mrs. Alvarez. She handed me a folded piece of paper. It read, "Court records show temporary incapacity declaration filed November 10th. Your son listed as provisional guardian. House listed for sale November 15th. Will investigate further." I read it 3 times before folding it carefully and hiding it under my mattress. They'd already started. The wheels were turning, and I was running out of time. Nicole arrived alone the next week. She carried a bouquet of lilies and wore a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I thought we could have a nice visit," she said, arranging the flowers in a plastic vase. A nurse lingered near the door, pretending to check something on her clipboard. Nicole sat down and took my hand. Her grip was firm, almost painful. "You're safer here, Helen. Everything is handled now. You don't need to worry about bills or maintenance or anything." "I never asked anyone to handle things," I said evenly. Her smile tightened. "Daniel and I just want what's best. The house sale will help cover your expenses here. It's expensive, you know." I pulled my hand away. "I don't want my house sold." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper the nurse couldn't hear. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. You're not getting any younger, and fighting us will only make you look worse." The nurse glanced over. Nicole's face shifted instantly back to pleasant concern. Well, I should get going, she said brightly. Take care, Helen. As she left, Mrs. Alvarez appeared in the hallway. She'd been close enough to hear everything. Our eyes met, and she gave me the smallest nod. She'd witnessed it. I started paying attention to everything. The facility held weekly residents' meetings where we could voice concerns. Most people complained about the food or requested better television channels. I attended every meeting and listened. I learned that residents had rights: the right to file complaints, the right to request advocates, the right to refuse certain treatments. I learned which staff members followed protocol and which ones bent rules. I learned that the state ombudsman visited monthly to address grievances. Knowledge became my weapon. One afternoon, I noticed something strange in my file. Mrs. Alvarez had left it on the table while she stepped out momentarily. I flipped through quickly. There was a note dated November 8th. Patient examined. Cognitive decline evident. Recommend full-time care. But I'd been at home on November 8th. I'd never been examined by any doctor here. I took a photo with the facility's shared tablet before Mrs. Alvarez returned. When she came back, I showed her. Her jaw tightened. That's Dr. Harrison's signature. He only visits once a month. I never met him, I said. She made a photocopy immediately. This changes things. I submitted a formal written request for a comprehensive cognitive evaluation. Mrs. Alvarez helped me word it properly, citing facility policy and patient rights. The director, a thin man named Mr. Wallace, reviewed my request with obvious irritation. Mrs. Patterson, you were already evaluated when you arrived. I'd like a second opinion, I said calmly. Policy allows it. He couldn't refuse without violating regulations. He scheduled the evaluation for 2 weeks out. The next day, Daniel called. The nurse handed me the phone with a knowing look. Mom, I heard you requesting unnecessary tests. You're making things difficult for the staff. I have the right to proper evaluation, I said. You're going to waste money on pointless procedures. We're trying to save for your care. Then the evaluation should confirm I need to be here, I replied evenly. He was quiet for a long moment. Don't do this, Mom. You're only going to embarrass yourself. Before I could respond, the line went dead. 2 hours later, Mr. Wallace informed me that my evaluation had been postponed due to scheduling conflicts. But Mrs. Alvarez overheard. She contacted the state ombudsman directly. 3 days later, the evaluation was rescheduled, officially, with no room for cancellation. The psychologist arrived on a Tuesday morning. Dr. Kim was professional, patient, and thorough. She spent 3 hours with me, testing memory, reasoning, spatial awareness, and problem-solving. I answered every question carefully. I drew the clock correctly. I recalled word lists. I solved puzzles. When we finished, Dr. Kim closed her notebook and looked at me for a long moment. Mrs. Patterson, your cognitive function is completely normal for your age. Actually, above average. Relief flooded through me. What happens now? I'll submit my report by tomorrow. She stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I don't know why you're here. That night, I finally slept soundly. But the next morning, Mrs. Alvarez showed me Dr. Kim's submitted report. Someone had added a paragraph at the end that wasn't there before. While test scores are adequate, patient displays underlying confusion and requires supervised environment. Dr. Kim's signature was at the bottom, but the handwriting didn't match the rest of the report. Mrs. Alvarez's face went dark. This is falsified. She immediately contacted Dr. Kim, who confirmed she hadn't written that paragraph. The evidence was piling up, but so was the danger. Someone was getting desperate. I tried to buy a newspaper from the facility's small shop. My debit card was declined. Confused, I called the bank from the lobby phone. The representative checked my account and said, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Patterson, but your account has been flagged. Your son has provisional access for safety purposes." What does that mean? He can monitor transactions and temporarily restrict access if he believes you're at risk of financial exploitation. My chest tightened. I didn't authorize that. It's part of the temporary guardianship arrangement filed with the court. Would you like me to send you the documentation? Yes. Please. The papers arrived 3 days later. Daniel had applied for temporary financial guardianship, claiming I was vulnerable to scams and poor judgment. A judge had granted it pending a full hearing. The hearing was scheduled for January 15th, 6 weeks away. 6 weeks where I had no access to my own money. 6 weeks where Daniel could drain accounts, sell property, and make it nearly impossible to fight back. Mrs. Alvarez reviewed the documents carefully. "This is provisional," she said. "If we can prove you're competent before the hearing, it gets reversed." But we were running out of time. The state ombudsman arrived unannounced on a Thursday. Her name was Ms. Ortega, and she carried herself with quiet authority. She interviewed me privately for over an hour. I told her everything: the false medical notes, the forged signature, the altered evaluation, the house sale, the financial control. I showed her the documents I'd collected. I showed her the photo of the fabricated doctor's visit. Ms. Ortega listened without interruption, taking detailed notes. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm opening a formal investigation. I'll be interviewing staff, reviewing all documentation, and requesting external audits. What happens to me while you investigate? You stay here for now. But your status will be flagged, which means no major decisions can be made without my review." After she left, the facility changed overnight. Mr. Wallace became overly helpful. Nurses checked on me constantly. Staff smiled too much. They knew they were being watched. But I also knew the real fight was just beginning. Mr. Wallace called a meeting 2 days later. Daniel and Nicole sat on one side of the conference table. Mrs. Alvarez and I sat on the other. Ms. Ortega attended via video call. Dr. Harrison, the doctor who'd supposedly examined me, sat at the head of the table looking uncomfortable. Mr. Wallace started with pleasantries, but Ms. Ortega cut through them. "Let's review the timeline. Dr. Harrison, you signed an evaluation dated November 8th. Can you confirm you examined Mrs. Patterson on that date?" Dr. Harrison shifted. "I reviewed her file and made recommendations based on the intake notes." "So you didn't examine her personally?" "Not directly, no. But the family provided extensive documentation." Ms. Ortega pulled up a document on screen. "This note claims a face-to-face examination. The timestamp says 2 p.m. Where were you at 2 p.m. on November 8th? Dr. Harrison went pale. I'd have to check my schedule." "I already did," Ms. Ortega said coolly. "You were at a conference in Philadelphia. You didn't return until November 10th. The room went silent. Daniel started to speak, but Ms. Ortega held up her hand. "We'll get to you next." After the meeting, I felt momentum shifting. But Thomas called that evening with troubling news. "Helen, the house listing went live yesterday. It says estate liquidation in the description." My stomach dropped. Can they do that? Technically, with provisional guardianship, yes. But I've filed a formal objection with the court. The sale is frozen until the hearing. I closed my eyes in relief. "Thank you, Thomas." "There's something else. The listing agent is Nicole's cousin. This was planned." That night, Daniel showed up at the facility unannounced. He stormed past the nurse's station and burst into my room. "What did you do?" he shouted. "The house sale is blocked. Do you know how much money we're losing?" Mrs. Alvarez appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Patterson, you need to leave. This is my mother. And this is a care facility with rules. You're disturbing other residents." Security arrived moments later. Daniel left, but not before leaning close and hissing, "You're going to regret this." Mrs. Alvarez documented everything. I kept a small notebook where I wrote down observations, conversations, and questions. I hid it in my dresser drawer under folded clothes. 3 days after Daniel's outburst, the notebook disappeared. I asked the nursing staff. They claimed they hadn't seen it. Mr. Wallace suggested I'd misplaced it due to confusion. But I knew exactly where I'd left it. That afternoon, Mrs. Alvarez knocked on my door. She held my notebook. "I found this in Mr. Wallace's office. On his desk." My hands trembled as I took it back. Why would he have it? I don't know. But I photographed his desk before removing it. "Ms. Ortega needs to see this." The notebook contained dates, names, and details about every suspicious incident. Someone had been reading it, analyzing it, looking for weaknesses. "They're trying to stay ahead of us," Mrs. Alvarez said quietly. I nodded. "Then we need to move faster." 2 days later, a woman I'd never seen before arrived. She was older than Nicole, impeccably dressed, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She introduced herself as Patricia Monroe, Nicole's mother. "Mrs. Patterson, I wanted to meet you personally. Nicole speaks so highly of you." I said nothing. She sat down uninvited. "I understand there's been some confusion about your care arrangements. I want you to know that Daniel and Nicole are acting out of love. Sometimes families need to make difficult decisions for their elders' protection." "I don't need protection," I said. Patricia smiled. "That's what my own mother said. But sometimes we don't recognize our own limitations. That's why responsible financial stewardship matters." The way she said it, calm, practiced, made my blood run cold. This wasn't Daniel's plan. It was hers. "The memory care wing has opened up," Patricia continued. "The staff think it might be more appropriate for your needs." Memory care. The locked ward where residents couldn't leave, couldn't advocate, couldn't fight back. "I'm not going there," I said firmly. Patricia's smile never wavered. "We'll see what the doctors recommend." After she left, I told Mrs. Alvarez everything. She looked worried. Patricia Monroe is on the facility's advisory board. She has influence here. The document copies I'd requested finally arrived. Mrs. Alvarez and I spent an entire afternoon reviewing them. The inconsistencies were everywhere. Dates that didn't align. Signatures that looked similar but weren't quite right. Medical visits scheduled when I'd been documented as out for family visit. One particularly damning note claimed I'd been aggressive towards staff on November 20th. But Mrs. Alvarez had been with me that entire day during a group activity. She had photos. "This is systematic," she said. "Someone built a false narrative over months." She compiled everything into a formal report and submitted it to Ms. Ortega and the State Medical Board. 3 days later, Dr. Harrison received a summons from the Ethics Board. He was required to answer questions about his documentation practices and patient examinations. Mr. Wallace called me into his office. "Mrs. Patterson, these investigations are disruptive. Perhaps we could resolve things more quietly." "I just want the truth," I said. He leaned back, his expression hardening. "The truth is that families know what's best. Sometimes residents' judgment is impaired, even when they don't realize it." I stood. "Then the courts will decide." As I left, I saw him make a phone call. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew he was calling Daniel. The pressure intensified. Nurses became cautious around me. Some wouldn't make eye contact. Others whispered in corners. Ms. Ortega returned for more interviews. She spoke with staff members individually, and I could tell some of them were scared. One evening, a younger nurse named Kelly knocked on my door. She glanced down the hallway before stepping inside. "Mrs. Patterson, I need to tell you something. When you first arrived, Mr. Wallace told us not to question the intake documentation. He said the family had been very thorough and we should just follow the care plan." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because it's not right. I became a nurse to help people, not." She trailed off. I told Ms. Ortega everything. After Kelly left, I felt the walls closing in. Daniel and Patricia wouldn't stop. They'd invested too much, planned too carefully. Then Mrs. Alvarez rushed in with papers. Emergency guardianship hearing. Daniel filed a motion to accelerate the case. It's scheduled for next week. My heart pounded. Can they do that? With the right connections and the right arguments, yes. We had 7 days. Thomas connected me with a legal aid organization that specialized in elder rights. An attorney named Mr. Brennan took my case pro bono. He reviewed everything meticulously, every document, every note, every inconsistency. He contacted Dr. Kim to testify. He subpoenaed records from Dr. Harrison. He requested bank statements showing when and how Daniel gained financial access. "Mrs. Patterson, I want you to understand something," Mr. Brennan said during our second meeting. "Even with all this evidence, courts often side with families. Judges assume children want what's best for their parents. So what do? We prove that their motives were financial, not protective. And we prove you're completely capable of making your own decisions. The days before the hearing were agonizing. I barely slept. Mrs. Alvarez brought me meals because I couldn't face the dining hall. But slowly, everything came together. Dr. Kim agreed to testify. The ethics board's preliminary findings showed serious concerns about Dr. Harrison's practices. Thomas provided financial records showing suspicious transfers. The night before the hearing, Mrs. Alvarez sat with me. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you fought back," she said. "That matters." I nodded, trying to believe her. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Daniel and Nicole sat with their attorney, a polished woman who looked expensive. Patricia sat behind them, her face unreadable. I sat with Mr. Brennan. Mrs. Alvarez and Ms. Ortega sat in the gallery. Daniel testified first. He painted a picture of a declining mother who couldn't manage her affairs, who'd become forgetful and confused. He spoke with emotion, his voice breaking at the right moments. "I just want my mother to be safe," he said, looking directly at the judge. "I'm trying to protect her from herself." His attorney presented the original intake documents, the medical notes, the care recommendations. Then it was our turn. Dr. Kim took the stand and explained the evaluation process. "Mrs. Patterson's cognitive function is normal. I found no evidence of impairment." "But doctor," Daniel's attorney interrupted, "aren't there good days and bad days with cognitive decline?" "There can be. But Mrs. Patterson showed consistent, strong performance across multiple domains over a 3-hour assessment. Her test scores place her in the 75th percentile for her age group." The judge looked interested now. Mr. Brennan then called Ms. Ortega. She presented the investigation findings, the falsified medical notes, the impossible doctor's visit, the forged additions to Dr. Kim's report. The turning point came when Mr. Brennan requested the original intake documents, not copies, but the originals with metadata intact. The dates didn't match. Several documents had been created or modified after my admission date. The signature analysis showed clear discrepancies. Daniel's attorney tried to object, but the judge silenced her. "Mr. Patterson," the judge said, turning to Daniel, "can you explain why medical notes dated before your mother's admission were actually created 2 weeks afterward?" Daniel stammered. The staff must have backdated them for filing purposes. That's not how medical records work." The judge called a brief recess. When we returned, her expression had changed completely. "I'm denying the guardianship petition. Furthermore, I'm ordering an investigation into potential fraud and elder abuse. The provisional financial controls are immediately revoked, and Mrs. Patterson's assets are to be restored to her full control." Daniel went white. Nicole grabbed his arm. Patricia stood abruptly and left the courtroom. The judge continued. "Mrs. Patterson, you're free to make your own living arrangements. The facility is ordered to release you immediately if you choose to leave." I felt tears slide down my cheeks, not from sadness, but from relief so profound it hurt. The facility moved quickly to update my status. Staff who'd ignored me suddenly became helpful. Mr. Wallace apologized profusely, claiming he'd been misled by the family. Mrs. Alvarez helped me pack my few belongings. "What will you do now?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. Thomas found me a small apartment with optional support services, housekeeping visits, meal delivery if needed, but complete independence. I could lock my own door. I could manage my own money. I could live on my terms. The bank restored my accounts. The house sale was cancelled, and I decided to keep it but rent it out for now. The income would help cover my expenses without draining savings. Daniel showed up at the facility the day before I left. He looked terrible, drawn, exhausted, terrified. "Mom, please. I'm sorry. We made mistakes, but we didn't mean." I held up my hand. "You planned this, Daniel. For months. You lied, forged documents, and tried to erase my autonomy. The lawyers say there might be criminal charges," he whispered. "Please don't let them do this." I looked at my son and felt something break inside me, the last thread of the relationship we'd once had. I didn't answer Daniel immediately. I let him stand there, waiting, the way I'd waited in that facility room. Finally, I spoke. "I'll talk to the prosecutor. I'll tell them I don't want to pursue charges. Relief flooded his face. But there are conditions, I continued. We're establishing complete financial separation. I'm appointing a neutral advocate to oversee my care decisions if I ever need them. You'll have supervised visitation only, if I choose to allow visits at all. And you'll respect every boundary I set. Mom, that's fair, I said firmly. You tried to steal my life. I'm offering you a chance at minimal contact. Take it or leave it. He took it. He had no other choice. Nicole never contacted me. Patricia disappeared entirely, probably worried about her own liability. The day I moved into my apartment, Thomas helped me carry boxes. Mrs. Alvarez stopped by with flowers. Even Kelly, the young nurse, sent a card. I stood in my new living room, small, simple, mine, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. 6 months later, Ms. Ortega contacted me. The investigation had concluded, and the state was implementing new protections based on what happened to me. Your case is being used in training programs, she said, to teach facility staff, social workers, and medical professionals how to recognize and prevent this kind of abuse. Good, I said. Then something positive came from it. I'd started volunteering with the legal aid organization that helped me. I spoke with other seniors facing similar situations, helped them understand their rights, encouraged them to fight back. Daniel sent supervised letters occasionally. They were stiff, formal, full of careful apologies. I responded sometimes. Other times I didn't. It was my choice now. I planted a small garden on my apartment balcony. I joined a book club. I had coffee with Thomas every Tuesday. I'd lost months of my life to that facility, to the fear and helplessness. But I'd gained something more valuable, the absolute certainty that I could fight for myself, that I could win, and that I never had to settle for less than dignity and truth. On quiet mornings, I'd sit with my coffee and watch the sunrise. I'd think about that locked door, the falsified documents, the moment when everything seemed lost. And then I'd smile. Because I'd walked through that door. I'd reclaimed my life. And I'd done it not with anger or revenge, but with patience, evidence, and the simple, powerful truth. I was free. I was strong. And I was exactly where I belonged.